Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crash Zoom. Sammie is on vacation this week, so you're stuck with me. It's just me, and I am just going to be running my mouth for an hour. I'm just kidding. I have invited a wonderful guest to join us on the show today. My guest today is Evelyn Lorena. Evelyn is a filmmaker and actor originally from Wilmington, North Carolina. After graduating from NYU Tisch School of the Arts, where we first met, she moved to Los Angeles, where she worked in theater and film, both as an actor and writer. After a health scare left her in a coma, she rededicated herself to film, receiving a Latinx Inclusion Fellowship from the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival and Netflix, which gave her the money to produce her short film, Gabriela. Gabriela, which I had the great pleasure to watch several times during the editing process, premiered at the Atlanta Film Festival in 2023 and has since gone on to be screened at over 50 film festivals worldwide, and it has qualified for the Best Live Action Short Film at the Academy Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, Evelyn Lorena. Evelyn, how you doing today?
Thanks. I'm doing really well. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Where are you joining us from?
I'm actually in Wilmington right now.
Oh, cool.
Hence the backyard and the curtains.
I do want to stay to like some of our Crash Zoom format, which we always start with a simple question.
Yeah.
What have you been watching?
Oh man. Well, I've been doing a lot of mindless resting, which what I call is, I guess people call it vegging out. But I've been watching Queer Eye, the new Queer Eye. That was great. I really was moved by that. But cinematically, I started watching Mirror again, which is really intense for like mindless resting. Um,
Tarkovsky Mirror?
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
While you're searching for that, I have to ask you, what was the voice inside of you that was like, today's the day to start Mirror?
I just love it. And it was actually some of the shots, like I have weird ways of like um connecting things that are in my kind of like artistic subconscious to the thing I'm working on. And believe it or not, a lot of the scenes from Mirror influenced some of the framing and shots in Gabriella, especially those outdoor shots. I mean, obviously, thematically, the film is a little bit different than Gabriella, but things like that. Or I'm always watching Phantom Thread again, so I'm sure that I'll be watching that in like a week again because that is like my favorite film ever. Something about it is just it meets all the criteria of things I like in one film, which is like it's like a heightened period piece, but it's like really weird, but it also deals with like toxic romance and just all the things that were in that film. And that, for example, like the music in that really inspired a lot of the stuff in Gabriella musically. So it's like, but they're different films, but it's like somehow brewing all in like this odd artistic subconscious.
Yeah, I'm just a big poison mushroom fan, so I'm always just like looking for films with more poison mushrooms, and there's a severe lack of them, which is horrible. Well, that's cool. I have been watching. I watched a film that I like had been totally not on my radar before.
Mm,
And because so I love sports, but I hate sports films in general.
right.
Like
Yeah.
sports films I find pretty weak. And so I finally watched a movie called North Dallas 40 by Ted Kotcheff, which stars a young Nick Nolte. It's based on a book which was written by a like sort of second string Dallas Cowboys wide receiver. And it's about the Cowboys teams and really sort of about like NFL culture in
Hmm.
the early 70s. And I thought this movie was incredible. It painted a really brutal and honest portrait of these professional athletes from the 1970s and sort of
Hmm.
just like the horrible pain that they're put their bodies through.
Yeah.
And um the NFL did not embrace the film. The NFL thought it was a danger to the sport, so they like kind of they tried to distance themselves from it, and like um it was a bit controversial at the time. I feel like it's a film that's kind of been, just nobody really talks about, but I truly thought it was excellent. It has quickly become, I think, the best sports movie that I've ever seen. So yeah, North
Wow.
Dallas 40, can't recommend
Oh
enough.
my gosh. Yeah. I'm going to watch that. Cause it was funny because like my parents have this like thing on their television that I never even knew it was a thing, but it's called Pluto. I don't know if
Yeah.
you know what. Okay, see,
Yeah.
I'm so, like so backwards. But I was searching through that, and they have different channels where it's like, 1970s cinema, or they have this or that. And I just started watching the 1970s cinema channel, and I think it was about it was a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was like a couple months ago. I don't remember now, but they had Midnight Cowboy, and I thought that that was like the best film I've ever seen in my life. Like PS, like just as a side note, um,
Yeah,
to
it's
Phantom
incredible.
Thread. Sorry, Phantom Thread. I love you still, but it was just I had never seen a film be so experimental yet I don't know, win the Oscars. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not that I haven't seen experimental film before, but I just, the way that it was incorporated into the film, it didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel like shocking. It felt so integral to the story and the way that everything was framed. And I don't know why I'm talking about this now, but I just love 70s cinema in general. So I'm sure that I'll love that sports film if it's about the 70s. So
Yeah, Midnight Cowboy is incredible. I got to screen it at the Plaza, like,
yeah, I was so jealous that I could be there.
yeah, and like what was so cool about like being there and watching it in a room with people was to like see like, dude, this movie still hits like so hard. Like
And the
not all
ending, I can't with the ending. Like I'm like sobbing every like I've seen it like 3 times now and I'm like, "Ugh."
it's so sad, but it's also so funny. The movie
Yeah,
is
hilarious.
hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, the lines from that movie.
I
Uh,
also
uh,
just love the vacancy of like a young John Voight because, as he's played, like with Ray Donovan, it's just such a different sensibility. When you see him, he's so like open and fresh face. And I just love that.
yeah,
Like it was
he looks
just
like a Gerber baby on a 6'5" man.
but I guess I just love seeing the progression of him in like it just I didn't recognize him at first, you know?
Young young John Voight is a revelation. He's so
Yeah.
open. He's so
Yes.
vulnerable. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's such a different thing and I'm like, "Whoa." Like yeah, there's some people that you really see a progression and then sometimes, certain people say kind of the same and that's their journey, but I always love seeing when things radically progress over time. Yeah, anyway.
Yes. Well, moving from the historical greatness of cinema to the greatness of cinema today, let's
Yes.
talk about this amazing journey that you've been on with
Oh,
Gabriela.
thank you. Yeah.
So how did this film start? Where were you when this idea began? What was happening in your life? Like where did this story begin for you?
Well, I had been in LA just after graduation and Sam Colicchio, who I had coffee with her one day and she was like, "Let's do this film." And I said, "Yeah." I was like, "I just did a play about it. Let's do it." It wasn't this particular film, it was a different one. It was like my first kind of short that I had done and I got Maris, who's Gabriela's current producer, on board. And we just shot it on a weekend. It was totally just like a rogue project that we were just doing for fun. And that ended up going to Outfest, which was kind of amazing because we just did not expect any of that. And that was really great. And after that, I started thinking, I said to myself, like, if I'm unhappy with all these narratives that not only am I getting offered, but I know my community is getting offered, I was like, why don't we just take things into our own hands and write the stories ourselves? Because the best representative of our community is always going to be someone from our community, instead of having and wishing that, I don't know, a 50-year-old white man would understand, I mean, and that's not to like judge them. It's just, just objectively the truth. So we just, I just started writing after that. Just, every day I would write, well, not every day, but, find different stories that I thought were interesting. And I would try writing a short or try writing the feature or whatever. And with this particular story, which was the next story after that short, or actually 2 shorts after, I'm sorry. Um, I was really interested. I had seen, I think it was either LA Times or some LA periodical had done like a small documentary video short on an undocumented immigrant, but they did it in a way that was not judgmental or biased or had an agenda. It was just literally following them in a very voyeuristic way. And I thought, wow, that is so cool if we could just tell stories that allowed people to just see people's humanity the way that this did. And you know, it was only like 2 minutes. It wasn't even a very long thing, but it really got my mind thinking. And I thought, well, I've not seen that kind of story with younger immigrants stories. And I would say that in America, that's a huge portion of, like, you know, our community, especially with like the undocumented community. So I started fleshing out a script. I had originally written it as a feature. Morris had contributed some, and we had I think, like about 100-page script. Um, and somewhere along that line, I just didn't like it anymore. I was like, I need to go away with this and really find out why I'm writing this, because it feels all very one dimensional to me. Morris agreed, and I started writing it as a short because I think the best way to distill a story and to really get to the root of what you're trying to write is to try to make it into a short, because there's not the luxury of like 100 pages to cover the thing, right? Um, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but anyway. So I wrote it as a short, and right after I did that, I got sick. And I wasn't really sure what my place was going to be in the industry. I know I still wanted to perform and everything, but I just didn't know what to do with myself, because at the time, you know, I could, you know, barely get up and go to the bathroom, you know. Um, and so my friend, um, on my second hospitalization during that time frame, sent me a link to this and said, you should just try it. You have that short and you just never know. And I think it was like the day before it was due, and I just submitted, you know, from the hospital and all of that, or getting out, just out of the hospital, I forget, but it was the same week. And the rest is history. And they funded our film. Here we are. That was a long-winded answer, but
That's amazing. So, circling back a little bit, so what? Let's because it is such like a an amazing kind of part of this story.
Mhm.
What can you talk a little bit more about what the illness struggles you were facing, and sort of what were you thinking while you were going through that critical time in your life?
It's interesting because during it, you know, people ask me all the time that, I mean, obviously I'm like still really super private about it. You're getting the exclusive. But I get asked a lot like how traumatic the situation was. And I keep saying that it's actually, I think, more traumatic for the people that experienced it around me, because they were the ones pretty much conscious for it. Like I was just kind of in dreamland, right? But that being said, I heard a lot of the conversations happening around me. Like I just didn't know what was happening. And I would say that the biggest sort of takeaway when I had I don't know how to describe it except for saying it's a spiritual experience, because there's no other way to describe it, because there was a moment where I could hear the frustration of the conversations happening around me, and I didn't know what to do, because everything I tried to, like, you know, have some sort of consciousness was not working. And there was one moment where I did try to just sort of spiritually take my life, where I was like, well, what if I'm in a casket and I'm hearing my own funeral and I don't even know, because all I saw was darkness, right? So I made a decision. I remember I was like, well, all the dreams that I had, and actually it was funny, like my even the film stuff like came up, and I um like, you know, performing and film and everything. And I remember just thinking, just let the life flow out of my body. Like I tried to, like, you know, unalive myself in that moment. Um and then I had a realization where I was like, wait a second, if you're that powerful that you can die or make yourself die, you can make yourself live. And I had like almost like a one-on-one with the creator in that moment, where I was like, no, you're right. Like if I can do this, then I can do the other thing too. And it just like, I don't know, it really motivated me like spiritually to like get out of the, you know what I mean? And then I think it was, I mean, it felt like days of trying. It could have just been hours. But then finally I was like, I like had one eye open and my mother was like, ah! And I was holding my hand and I was just like, oh my God. And it was just this like strange visceral understanding that like I had a choice over my life and I was more powerful than I kind of understood. You know what
When
I
when
mean?
when you came, so, and this is all like while you're in a coma, like just to
Yeah,
be clear,
medically. So it's
medically.
weird because it's like, I guess it is considered the coma because you're unconscious, right? And and it was like weeks, but it wasn't like a brain dead kind of coma. Do you know what I mean? Because
Right,
there's different
right.
types of comas, right? It wasn't like that. Because that's like miraculous when people kind of get out of that, right? But
Sure, sure.
not that mine wasn't miraculous. Like if you ask any doctor, they're like, the reason they called my parents in is because they were like, she's gonna, you know what I mean? Um, so that was pretty miraculous in that regard. But yeah, that was all happening when I was unconscious. Yes.
And so when you so when you come out of this state, did that, you talk about that sort of like that affirming mindset or that sense of that empowerment, was
Mhm.
that present as soon as you became, conscious or awake again, or did it take some time to kind of like rediscover some of those like experiences that you had had
Yeah.
while
I
you
mean, I
were
think it
in a
was a
different
little bit of
place?
both. I think it was a little bit of both. I think it was when I woke up, it was like I can't describe to you like the amount of energy that I just kind of felt that I had not felt like ever, like ever. I think mostly because for most of my life, I would tend towards emotionality and depression and just kind of, I think I just didn't understand a lot of things about myself. So then my go to would just be like, I'm sad about this. And that kind of energy was very new to me and it was immediate. So I think that's where the second part comes in, where it's like the second part of the choices you gave me, where I didn't know how to handle it quite yet, but I felt it. Does that make sense? So it was like, it took some time, I think, and even now, I feel like I'm still integrating a lot of that, but the feeling was immediate. Like when you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Did you
makes any sense,
bring
but
Yeah, did you immediately, um did you bring any of that feeling, like, to the script that you were working on prior to
oh yeah.
the submission? So you
Oh,
were in the writing process.
prior to the submission, no. And I say that because so when we get the fellowship, the script is either, I mean, they may have changed this now because I think now they require a full script, but at the time, all they required was a pre draft or a treatment. They didn't require the full script because the whole point of the fellowship was to finish the script with mentors and recraft it. So I would say that from when I submitted it, the idea of the script was always there. Like you want to explore the inner life of this person. It's a character, almost character study. That was always the same. But I think the way that we went about it and the themes that we incorporated, especially that feeling of, personal liberation that happens with kind of restricting circumstances, that was definitely infused into the film in the later parts. So I would say it happened afterwards. Yeah.
That's cool. Did you feel, was it specifically from some of the, like, support that you got from that fellowship that was able to, like, help kind of narratively find your way through this experience? Or were you going to the fellowship sort of being like, "I just had this incredible experience that I need to narratively infuse into this short," like.
No, I think I honestly, like I said, I just started being public about this, like literally like in the last week or two. And not like I'm, advertising it from the hills. I just mean when people have asked me about it, now I'm a little more open. I would say at the time the fellowship didn't even know. I kept my mouth shut
Wow.
about. I think, and I think I'm not sure if I think it was a mixture of so many feelings where I did have a little bit of shame about it in some ways because at the time I was also looking at my life and really sad that like I couldn't do certain things anymore. Like the last time I ran was, I used to be a runner. I used to run 40 miles a week, and I think the last time I ran even like a mile or two was, 5 years or whenever this happened, um, which is not sad to me now, but at the time it was. And I think I didn't want anyone to doubt my ability. That was the biggest thing. I didn't want anyone to patronize me. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I wanted everyone to treat me as an equal and just as powerful. And that, I think that's why I just kept it under wraps. And then now that I feel like I've integrated some of that a little more, I can talk about it in a way that isn't gonna feel that way, where I'm like, oh, am I gonna be shamed or feel weak or whatever? I don't feel that now, but at the time, I just did. I was like, I haven't processed this completely, and I don't need to talk about it yet.
Yeah, that I mean, it makes total sense. Do you feel like this experience with the film has been a part of that processing? Do you think it's simply just been the time passing that has like, the way
Um,
that
no, I think it's both. I mean, I think time has a weird way of like, I mean, I think it can like mess you up. Like if you just let time pass then and you don't address something, then it doesn't make it better. Um I used to have an ex that was like, no, time just makes it better. And I'm like, no. I'm like, not always. I'm like, if you're not confronting the situation or integrating what's happening, then or processing it, then time is just adding to the baggage, But in terms of the film, absolutely. I feel like it even reconciled a lot of generational familial stuff that I was, kind of always dealing with and clashing with on certain things with my parents, which I think anyone in the Latino community can feel. That's especially from immigrant families where there's this. I'm sure it doesn't happen with every family, but with a lot of families, and I see it with, you know, friends of mine and things like that, and including myself, where there's just these weird generational clashes that happen sometimes, cultural clashes, because the way that you grow up and are raised in Latin America can be very different than the way you're raised in the United States. And I think that those clashes create a lot of like identity things that are messy, including, like I said, like what I've gone through. And so I think that the film gave me a deeper understanding of like where my parents are coming from and also um, where I need to go, because I didn't anticipate the film to have that sense of self discovery until most of the editing process, I feel like. I think like when we shot it, I shot so many things. Like we just shot like so much. And going through it all, I really was, you know, it's not that I was confused about what the story was about. It's just that I didn't know how to distill it as well. And I think in the editing process that became more clear to me. And then that healing process also became more clear to me because I think part of the healing for me as a person or, separate from the story has been breaking limitation. Like to me, that is such a healing theme for people. Like when you can break out of your own limitations, like that is, I don't know, it's just so desperately beautiful, that you can do anything. And I felt a lot of that not only in my life, but I wanted the film to have some of that. And because that's what I think is necessary for the story and for Gabriela, she feels restricted in so many ways and lost in so many ways that I think by the end, there's a sense that she can carve her own path and that there's a way forward, even if it's not exactly how she looks like. She has a little bit more confidence to go through that, without making it about self hating or something like that, which I think all of us do. We internalize something goes wrong and we think it has to do with us. And oftentimes it really doesn't. It really doesn't have to do with you. It has to do with so many forces that are out of your control, but the thing you can control is, your reaction and the way that you move forward and what you grow and get out of it.
Yeah, so I feel I worry that I've buried the lead here in this interview. So this, the story of Gabriella is that this is about this is about a young a young undocumented woman who wants to be a swimmer, and the conflict that comes forth is from the tension of her trying to pursue this dream. So how did that choice of her becoming a swimmer, like, did you always know the sort of resonance that that metaphor had for your own life, or do you think that that was sort of a happy accident that you then, found later on throughout the creative process, that Gabriela's pursuit of a life in swimming and like the metaphor of the water actually had a lot of like resonance with your own journey as an artist, and as a child of immigrant parents?
Yeah, well, at first it was just intuitive. Like, it's so funny. People ask me all these questions. They're like, oh, intention and blah, blah, blah. And there is intention with everything, but it's so wild to me how much of it is just like intuitive, like starting. And I'm not saying that like in a, in a way that like reduces the work. I mean it in like, it just starts with, this feels right and I'm just going to do it. And then as you unravel it, then it gets like more and more intentional. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with the swimming is originally in the feature form, I think I had originally had her as like a basketball player, like super early on. And I was just like, this is not working. I was like, what's another competitive sport? I was like, swimming. Swimming's good. I was like, swimming is great. So let's just do that. Because I used to be a runner, but I didn't want it. I didn't want it to be a runner. I was like that's so that felt too literal to me, right? So I just
I am really intrigued by Gabriela, the Guatemalan basketball player,
I
though.
know. Well, because like I wanted it to be, I think originally I'd written it like more quirky, like Adventureland Juno kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, oh, cool. She could be playing basketball. She listens to like Husker Du, like really cool, alternative kind of. But then I didn't work. I was like, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. So it just felt like a little arbitrary, which it was. And so I liked the swimming idea, and as I developed it into the short, it became so much more clear that not only trying to incorporate some form of indigenous elements and how important earth elements and water elements and all those things are in Maya Mayan culture, um it just felt like the right thing. And I know that water is used as a symbol of liberation for so many different kind of coming of age stories, but I wanted it to be very specific to her, where there was a combination of different forms of water. Um, and the different forms of water mean different things, because like I felt like the oceanic water was the purest kind of water you could have. But it was almost like there was two different oceanic waters. There's like the real one, which is kind of like the scary kind of thing. And then there's like the one in her dreams, which is like I think the most powerful because it's like from a higher self. And then there's like the chlorinated water, which is the fake water. That's what I call it, is the fake water, because it's like it's treated, it has a chlorine, it's part of the country club. It's not really, it's almost like this toxic water, if that makes sense. Um, so there's just different, I think, levels to the water. And I think for swimming, the actual physical act of swimming was really important to me as the story developed as well, because I think we're all swimming. We're all trying to tread water. We're all trying to keep our head above the water, literally. And I mean, literally for her in the story, but I felt that that was a good kind of parallel to what people are spiritually going through every day.
Yeah. Well, you might be swimming. I'm sinking over here personally, but
You're not.
we're trying.
You
We're
know,
trying.
you know what I think. You know what I think about like when that. First of all, I don't think you are. I think that you just made a fucking amazing film, and everyone is really, really. I mean, I'm excited to see it, and I'm not everyone, obviously, but I'm going to count myself as everyone. It looks amazing. You have accomplished something that not many people can accomplish, and it's a miracle. It's a miracle, and it's a miracle that you're here, that you have so much spiritual wisdom now from everything that you've gone through. I find it so incredibly inspiring. I've told you that. And, to me, that is not sinking. That is I feel like comparison is the thief of joy. Like if we have these expectations or compare ourselves to the expectations, we're always going to fail, right? I read this thing from this like 11-year-old cancer survivor that was like, we only we only feel bad when we do our best, but we want to meet the expectation versus, oh, I'm butchering it, but she was basically saying that we should always do our best, and that is what we should be proud of over trying to meet a certain expectation because we'll never really meet it. It's kind of like perfection. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And to remind you and everybody that, you are doing great, even if it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what to say other than, yeah, you're right. Let me ask you this. Once you came out of production, or maybe like later on into
Mhm.
post-production, once you're nearing the end of your edit, did you have any expectations for this film? What was your plan going into the distribution process?
Yeah.
What were you thinking? And then speaking on like sort of expectation is the thief of joy, or whatever brilliant thing you just said. What was your experience with that dynamic throughout the distribution, the first stage of the distribution life of Gabriella?
Everything I just said is really easy to say. Putting it into practice is the difficult thing, right? It's like I always say, like, simple. It's what is it that I told my friend the other day? I was like, oh, everything can be simple. It's just hard to do. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel about not only expectations, but doing the film. Like, even Orson Welles, I think he said that, right? He was saying that, like, you can learn everything about film in like half a day. Like, you don't, like, there's nothing that's like so super complicated about all of it. It's just
I'm
the
pretty
fact.
I'm pretty sure he just said more wine,
I
please.
know, I know, I know. But like, I mean, maybe I just like Citizen Kane, but
No, no. Oh, I know. I listen. I love Orson Welles. He's just such a funny character. And yes, he says it's his quote is literally in the like pre-roll of Behind the Slate. He's like, the whole scope of movies can be learned in an hour and a half, or like whatever.
yeah, and I find that to be true about like even like the way to navigate life. Like it's very like simple. It's just hard to do. And anyway, I'm saying all that
Ah, it's so hard.
because I try to tell myself it's like not hard, but sometimes I'm like, this takes a little effort. But I
Oh
think
yeah.
like the film of like expectation stuff. I mean, of course, I go in very optimistically where I was like, I want it to do well. I think at the end of it, to ground myself, I said, look, regardless of what happens, I can set a goal that is impossible and extreme. I'll do that. But on the other side, I want, I think the biggest intention I had behind it was that it was received with an open heart. Like that was the biggest important thing for me, that people received it with an open heart, because even if people who maybe, like the whole preaching to the choir thing, like I know that would be well received, right? From certain parts of certain communities. But what about if I showed it to a place that it may not be welcome at? Would people still receive it with an open heart? And I wanted that for the film. I wanted it to be something where you could show somebody that was progressive, that was conservative, that was Christian, that was not, that was, I wanted that sense of universality to it. So I think my bigger intention in setting it was, will this be received with like an open heart? So there was like a spiritual intention, and then there was the physical goals of like, oh, I want to go to these many festivals. I want to go to these festivals. These are the ones that I want to target. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
So wait.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Let me follow up on this. So I mean, I think that's really really interesting. So was there anything that you did beyond sort of just like putting the intention out to the universe of like this being received as an open heart? Did that affect sort of, I don't know, your marketing strategy, or sort of the way that you even presented the film, whether it be on social
Sure.
media or
Absolutely.
like in a
Absolutely.
festival submission?
Yeah, I think well, I believe like once you start an intention for anything, like you postulate something, I think you start to follow up with actions of that, right? Like it just matches the actions afterwards because you already know that's what your intention is. So I definitely think it affected the way that we framed it. Because like even in my director statement, I've written like 4 different versions of that director statement. And I think the first version I felt was, it was too general. It was very objective. And I didn't feel like it met the attention. I was like, if you're going to read this, would you think this was like a film you would want to open your heart to? And my answer was no. So I, would recraft that, in the director statement. And then even with the visuals, I wanted certain, you know, I think I had that even intention even before shooting, because our visuals, like we had a hard time at the beginning sort of getting a cinematographer mixture from scheduling to vision, you know what I mean, the way that we saw the film. And the person that we ended up getting, I felt really understood what I wanted in that regard. And I think it affected the visuals. I think a lot of people, you know, respond to the visuals in a very, moved, heartfelt way, which I think is very important. Um, yeah, I think it was just, and also I have said this in other interviews before, where I wanted the film to feel meditative. And so that was also infused into the intention of the film. Like I wanted it to feel, very quiet. It's like, in the editing process, we had that in mind with dialogue. Like a lot of dialogue was cut, you know what I mean? Because it just wasn't necessary, and certain things don't need to be said. I feel like that's kind of a trend now because of, in movies where things need to be very expositional and played out to people because they want to make sure it meets a certain demographic. And that to me is just, bleh. You know what I mean? um, because, and again, like, I'm not saying that there isn't time and place for that. I just feel like everywhere, like, the notes even that we got from certain other executives and things like that were like, oh, make it a little more clear and make it a little more expositional. Have her say blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, like, I don't, I just did not agree with that. And I think that that sort of original intention even is behind my no, because then if somebody gives me a note, I'm not just going to take it because I, have a shaky kind of wishy-washy understanding of my story, you
How
know?
many how many voices did you let into that editing process? Did you get a lot of notes like during that final development of the film? Was the fellowship that you had received, was that team
Yeah,
still involved? And
they involved not only the mentors, but certain people from the institute as well as from Netflix. So there was a lot of voices, and that's what I mean about making sure you have your intention from the beginning very clear, because um, I think it can be very easy when you're trying to get your film out, and there's that like fine line of, you want to be liked so that there's reception, but you don't want to just be liked. You know what I mean? Um, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but
yeah,
it's just
you want to be respected.
right. And or I guess the better word is of value. You want to be of value, right? And so
Yeah.
that can get confused with being liked. And so when you get a note, you're like, oh, I got to fill it. I got to fill the note because they told me. And it's like, you don't have to fill the note, because if you know exactly the clarity of what you're trying to achieve and you know how to execute that, doesn't matter if people tell you to, like, I don't know, put vomit in the 5th scene on the floor. You're going to say, no, I'm not going to do that, because I know that that would be contrary to my intention, because there were certain things, like if I want the film to feel meditative, if I put in all this expositional stuff, it's not going to feel that way. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's just going to feel another way, which maybe could work and that'd be great, but
Yeah.
it's not what I wanted,
Yeah.
and I think most of that, I think Rick Rubin talks about that, where it's like, in the beginning, it's not about what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's never about what they want. It's about what you're expressing. Because
I do
then,
wish Tarkovsky had, explained the mirror a little bit more in Act One. I mean, would it kill him to
no,
explain mirror a
but
bit more?
but I love that. That's what you know, I had an interview last week and they were like asking me to like dissect every little thing. And I was like, part of me like was dying inside because I was like, well, just watch the film. Like, isn't that the point?
Yeah. What does
You
it mean to
know?
you?
I know. And it's like, and I think that, everyone's kind of, and I get it. Like people want to know the connection. There's something compelling between like the person who creates it and the thing. But I think I agree with like, David Lynch, Daniel Day-Lewis, and all these people that are like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, because if you talk about it, you limit it, you judge it in some form, even for the other person. Because, I was actually watching the film last night, Gabriela again, because I was looking for something, for a thing that I have to send. And something new occurred to me about the film. And I was just like, see, if I limited what I thought about it, it would have, you know what I mean? It would just limit it for somebody else if I just say, oh, this is what it's only about, and it was something that was not even, I think, related to self discovery. So I don't know. I feel like I love talking about it, but I also don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I find it amazing. It's really hard to say no in those situations. I find like I mean sometimes even when I know something to be true in my own heart, it's really hard to have that courage. Do you how did you kind of fortify those decisions, or that the willingness to sort of say no? Did you ever feel like do you feel like you got the value that you like that we all want out of that experience? Did you were there situations where you felt like, oh, maybe like this person gave me a note, I said no, and like maybe that relationship didn't work out exactly, and like how do you move on from that? Like how did you navigate all those sort of interpersonal dynamics when it comes to like finishing your piece of art?
I think you're right about it requiring a lot of courage, because I think for most of my life I was very much a people pleaser. Like that was the only way I knew how to function. You know what I mean? Where I and I think it has a lot to do with the way I was raised. I think my parents just saw me as like, because I had good grades, they were like, "Oh, be perfect." And they didn't mean to put that on me. I just internalized it. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
was always like, I need to like make sure you're comfortable, and like this is great. And I think there was a moment, um during this film actually, where I was like, I cannot do that. I cannot do that. This means too much. Like I think it was because it was the biggest opportunity I had been offered, you know, in the last sort of 10 years of my life. And I just didn't want to blow. And I said, I also just got a second chance to just do this. Like I could be dead, like literally. So I think the visceral nature of that pulls you through, because you're just like, and I'm not saying everyone needs to go through a near death experience to like, have a sense of courage. I just mean
You
that,
heard it here first. You heard it here first. Go
but
find a cliff to hang off of.
just go die. No. But the spiritual idea of like, I think the shamans talk about this, and like spiritual teachers, they talk about like the ego death and stuff. And I think it has a lot to do with that, where it's like you really have to just stop care. Like it's like I don't know if it's like this weird sense of like towing the line between like arrogance and just being certain, because certain people will maybe see it as arrogant, and I'm just like, well, let them, because they don't understand the journey I've been through. They don't understand what my intention is, because if you know that your intention is pure and it's like coming from a place of integrity, then who cares what everybody else thinks? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because it's not for them. It's not for them.
Hmm.
And why would you want it to be for them anyway? They're already judging you. Like, it's like you don't want that. So, and I think it's hard because you do want everyone to like the film and you want it to reach people, but I think it's taken a lot of trust and just like reminding myself every day that it's like, you did the best you can, and that was it. Because trust me, like, this is what I meant about comparison is a thief of joy. People don't know that like we also got like 100 rejections from 100 festival. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of rejection along the process. There has been emails that are like, no, we don't want you know what I mean? And it's just, and that's heartbreaking too. That's a lot of rejection to deal with in the span of a year, And it makes you question, like, did I make a good film? Like, did I? Is it a piece of crap? And the only thing that I can say will always answer that question for anybody is like, what was your intention? It's not going to be a piece of crap. I mean, technically, sure, maybe there are things that you can improve upon, blah, blah, blah. But those are technical things. Like, is your intention, like, did you want to make something that was of whatever? And did you do the best you could? And yeah, the answer is yeah. Then there's nothing else you can, I mean, you just have to, I guess, pragmatically and realistically just value yourself, even through things that are maybe could be perceived as failures. You know what I mean?
Was there a point during the festival journey
Yeah.
of Gabriela? Was there a point where like it started to switch for you where you were like, "Oh, like this actually has legs. Like this is getting the feedback that I was hoping for." What was
Yeah.
that
Like,
moment and then what did you do with that realization?
I think it was when we got into Festival Regard, because Festival Regard, um, they are kind of like, I mean, maybe people don't know that much about them, but if you look at like sort of the Oscar qualifying festivals, they do exclusively shorts. And I think it's two of the ones that they give awards to get nominated for, Academy Awards and things like that. And um, that's usually not the case. Like, usually it's just one. So I was like, whoa, this is a big festival. And um, when we got there, and also at Imagine Native, I think in Toronto, because we screened at the TIFF Lightbox, which is like, whoa. I think all of that, those Canadian festivals, it was like I was in disbelief. Like, I remember I cried at Imagine Native. I was just like sobbing in the corner, and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I just can't believe I'm here." Like, it was just so like, I don't know. It's like I'm getting emotional now, but like, it was just a lot. Like, it was a lot, not only to see, because those two festivals really honored, I think, the breadth of Indigenous culture, which included like the North American territories, and just seeing all of that was really moving to me, and being included in all of that, that was really moving to me. So I think it was some point between those two festivals. They were all around the same time. So that was, I think, when I was just like, whoa, could this have, you know what I mean? Um, I guess, but even like at Atlanta, when we got Atlanta and they told us how many submissions there were and how many they took, I was just like, I felt really honored for that. Like, I really, really did, because I didn't realize how huge the Atlanta Film Festival is. Like, it is so big, you know, and what they took, and everything. It was just, yeah, that was also really, really humbling for me.
So how did that shift your, you know, out of that
Mhm.
emotionality and that emotional truth, how did that sort of shift your business sense of like, okay, well, like now I need to do XYZ with this film?
Yeah, I mean, I think through the whole process, and Mars will probably make fun of me for this, because I think he can be really good at being cut and dry about certain things. And I'm someone who's like, it's not that I don't let go. It's just that like I'm always like refining, you know what I mean? So I think if you look at like our press dossiers or our EPKs, even from the beginning to now, it's like radically different, because I'm always like tweaking it based on different festivals and things that I learn. Um, because you get a sense, I think, being allowed into these particular spaces, or included, I should say, into these particular spaces, um, you learn a lot of different professional things, just they offer a lot to their filmmakers too, like Imagine Native and Festival Regard and La Leaf and all these, even Atlanta, Atlanta, great resources for their filmmakers and things like that. I think that you learn certain things not only from what they offer for the filmmakers, but what other filmmakers are doing. And so I just kind of was inspired by that, and just throughout the process would, I think, tweak certain things business wise. Like, I was like, oh, you can apply to this thing now, knowing that you have this behind yourself. Or, there's other grants that you can apply to that are marketing grants, and do that, and highlight this part of the film so that, you have that. Or like I said, redoing the EPK so that it, presents a sort of stronger film to the press, and just things like that. But I think one of the things I learned about and I think I learned this at Festival Regard, is that having I think a good PR person, which we didn't do until later, um, having a good PR person, I think from the beginning of the film, when it's about to start its festival life, they can help you craft festival strategy. And unfortunately, they also, if you get like a good team or that has experience with the live action short or narrative short world, there's ways to also help you facilitate into different festivals, right? Like I said, we didn't have that, just budgetary wise, we didn't, but a lot of shorts do end up doing that. That helps sort of, especially I think it's important, those relationships or those um, facilitating kind of relationships are important when, one, if you're first starting out, or two, if you really just don't have a sense of what the business stuff is. You know what I mean? I also got lucky because a lot of the different PR people I met, like at Festival Regard, I just picked their brains. I was like, would you mind having a Zoom with me and just chatting back and forth? And that was really helpful because a lot of that, I could apply into the marketing kind of situation. Um, and then later on, we did decide to do like a small sort of PR contract. But I would say that the biggest advocate for your film will always be yourself. And so even if you do have people on your team, just know that that will be limited to the amount of effort that you put in too, because I think sometimes people think like, well, if I get a PR team and I get the right producer, I'm set. And it's like, no, because it's your short, it's you need to be 4 times more passionate than the people that are on your team, and need to be probably, unfortunately, working 4 times more. You know what I mean? That's what people, I think, don't see. And what I tell people when they ask me like, oh, you just got the right producer, right? And I was like, no, absolutely not. It's not about that. I mean, Morris was great, but it's not about somebody else doing the work or saving you, I guess, from whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. So now uh, Gabriela is qualified for the Academy Awards. I mean, it's just amazing to even like it's such a
I
crazy
was
sentence
like,
to say.
what?
How
Like,
so
like
like
Marius was telling me, and I was like, what?
for those who don't know, how does that happen? And where are you at now in that process?
So they're actually, I think, releasing the short list today. So we'll see who makes that list, and then you vote from that for the nominations and stuff. Um, but I guess in terms of like, oh my gosh, our film and stuff, like I guess there's like several ways that you can qualify. You can qualify, like I mentioned earlier, through different awards at different festivals. Different festivals will give a certain awards that qualify them. So, for example, I think there's like 80 festivals that are live action qualifying, and um, when you win, I guess the particular award, like certain shorts are like, I think like Bend Film Festival, for example, like they have two qualifying. So it's like Best Narrative and then Best Indigenous will qualify you. Or, like Festival Regard, they have Best Short and something else that qualifies. Anyway, long story short is that that's one option. The other option is if you um, win or pay for theatrical distribution. So, for example, ours, we did end up winning something with the Roxy. They chose us out of 5 shorts, one of 5 shorts to be theatrically released, and we had the release in San Francisco and LA. So that was great. Yeah, those are the two kind of options that you do that. Like we just applied, and that was kind of what happened. And I feel like that's happened with everything. Like everyone's like, who did you know? And it's like, I literally just blindly submitted my stuff like to like everything. Like everything. Like we didn't have an in on a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? And um some shorts do. Like I talked to other shorts during the season and they were like, "Oh yeah, our PR person kind of helped us." And I don't know where that was like we didn't have it. You know what I mean? We and most shorts people don't. Like they're making the short so that they can have a calling card, you know what I mean? They're not doing it because, you know, they want to win an Oscar or something, you know. And like I said, we're really honored that we're even in that whole thing, but um that wasn't ever our first intention. And so I think when we were navigating all these festivals and these things, it was all very new to me and to us, you know. Um,
Yeah. Isn't it
but
crazy
yeah.
how much work like continues
Oh my
after the
gosh.
the film is done?
There's been more work after the film than there was during. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not joking. Like, it's
Yeah.
wild. Like, you know, and I actually think people need to understand this red, like, huge, like, alarms is that you need to have, as a cushion, try to have at least half or double your budget. Like, I don't know, whichever for post marketing stuff. I'm so serious. Like, I think that we've maybe like, it's like the equivalent. You know what I mean? Because it is so expensive. And if you do want to do PR, you definitely better have the butt. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't think people incorporate that. They're so worried about, oh, how much is production going to cost? Which rightfully so. You need to pay your people and all that. But like, it's just wild that the post stuff I think is more, and people, that would be my one thing as a takeaway to anybody is I'm like, get a budget for the post marketing stuff, not just post production, like
Yeah.
post marketing.
Post.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, which is wild. It's, I mean, everything is money. I'm just like so sad, but
So yeah, I couldn't agree more. What
you know,
so
right?
what
You're feeling it, right?
Oh, I'm feeling it. I mean, I did not raise enough like post. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got we've
No, we
got
didn't
we've got
either. We didn't either.
we've got some money in the bank right now that we're like,
Yeah.
but that is still going to like submission fees and that we're
Yeah.
still like scraping by and
Yeah.
we're gonna need more. And
I know. And
it's
that's the
and
thing
yeah.
is that that's what I meant about like the person behind the project is going to be working so much more because people don't see the like this is what I meant also by comparison is Thief of Joy is because people just see the final thing, right? They just see the glamour of the final thing. They don't see the fact that you're like up until 4 in the morning submitting to stuff. They don't see that like, you know, in my case, like you're in an ambulance with like, you know, blood being drawn in an oxygen mask and emailing like the Q&A flyer. You know, they don't see that. You know, they don't. And I'm not saying that to like tout my own whatever. I just mean that you have to have, you know, I guess you're just the person that burdens all that, unfortunately, you know, especially when there's not a lot of funds. You know, I don't know if it's right or wrong. I mean, part of me kind of enjoys it in the sense that you have a little more control over your film and that you're the person that's making it happen. Like, that's the cool part. The exhausting part is that I want to sleep, you know?
Yeah.
And people just don't see that. People don't see
Yeah.
the effort that, you know, that maybe you have put in or not, you know? And
Yeah. Well,
maybe they do, but anyway.
they don't. They don't. But all I can say is that thank God at least we are well compensated for every step of the journey, because if I wasn't cashing these fat checks, like I'd have a really hard time living with myself as a filmmaker.
Are you being sarcastic?
I am being sarcastic. I'm
Okay,
not
I was like,
cashing.
wait,
I'm
what?
not.
I was like, what fat checks? I was like, what fat checks?
No,
I
dude.
was like, wait. No, but that's so true too, because people are like, oh, are you making a lot of money? And I was like, you know what's really backwards? And maybe this is like, I shouldn't say this, but I actually think it's kind of backwards that filmmakers have to pay for festival submissions. Um, I was
Yeah,
thinking about
dude.
I was thinking about that the other day where I was like, wait a second, we're paying and what? And then people are like, yeah, but you're paying for like the program. And I said, no, I know, but like, why are we the ones doing that? Like, shouldn't it be like,
It's a
I don't know.
system where the creators are the customers.
That's what I'm saying though, and I find that kind of weird. Like
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
just like
It's
I'm like,
unfortunate.
wait, because I feel like in other places, like for example, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs in Canada, but one of the things I was very pleasantly surprised and almost shocked was how much the government is involved in like giving to the institutions, which is
Almost
like,
everywhere outside of the United States.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, what? And like, I cannot tell you. So they set up, like, for example, at Imagine Native and Festival Regard, they set up these one-on-ones, right? With not only the grant people, but like, for example, the big things in Canada is like CBC, Telefilm, all those, right? They set up the one-on-ones and they're like, yeah. And they were just so open. They were like, yeah, if you have a script, send it to us. We are like totally looking for content. And I was like, this would not happen in the US. Like in the US, it'd be like, get out of where, peasant. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's so weird. Like it's just such a different understanding, like civic understanding. Like it was just weird.
Yeah. That's
Which I don't
amazing.
know why it's like that in US because it's supposed to be more like equitable, like in the idea of like the American dream, but it just feels like not like that. Like it felt so different when I was in Canada.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how unfettered capitalism kind of like destroys the very dream that
Oh
it
my
like
God.
promises in some
I
cases.
know.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, uh, yeah, it's a very difficult dynamic for American filmmakers. But to wrap things up, what do you think is next for you? What are you cooking up right now? What do you both for Gabriella, like
Mhm.
beyond the Oscar qualifying run, and then for your next project, what are you thinking?
Well, we're now moving on to like the traditional kind of final distribution phases. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it or not, but I'm going to say it. We did get a really cool um, telefilm um, Quebec distribution in Canada based on the Canadian festivals we had been at.
Amazing.
So that'll be available to like Canadian citizens, which is like so cool. I was just like, oh my God, this is so nice. Um, so that's one thing. And we'll obviously advertise that when it comes time. I think it's set for later this year. I mean, not later, early next year. I'm sorry. Um, and so, but yeah, and whatever other modes of distribution that we're gonna look for. I mean, it would be nice, I think, for Shorts World to get sort of like sales agents, but that can be sometimes tricky. But that's kind of, I think, what we're, you know, um, more tangibly looking at, I guess. And then for myself, I mean, I would look. I'm not gonna lie. Doing this film took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me. I think mostly because it was so personal, because of budget stuff. I think just in general, it was just an ambitious feat. Like it may not look that way for a short, but it is. And so I think for me, it's like I really want to refocus on performing and just doing. I think a little less stressful stuff in terms of filmmaking. But that being said, I am working on my feature that is very different from Gabriela. It's kind of like a toxic relationship. It's like a how did I describe it to someone the other day? It was like Revolutionary Road meets like um now I forget the other film that I was comparing it to, but it's kind of like it has
Love
like
and Basketball. There's a big basketball
no, no, not
component.
Love and
No.
Basketball. No, I mean no offense to Love and Basketball, but no, it's not that. It's like it's got like a bit of a Terrence Malick kind of vibe on it, where there's like existential kind of questions about love and how does that it portrays their relationship across time, so it's not just like oh you met these people and it's a 2 year thing. It's like across decades kind of thing. So anyway, that's what I'm working on for the filmmaking side. But other than that, like I said, I really would like to just focus on performing for a while, at least over the next 6 months to a year, just because I feel like that takes a little it's not mindless. It's a lot of work, but I think it's a different part of my brain that I want to exercise, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
I know that you get it because that's what,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I am like, the junkie part of me is currently like whipping myself to like get the next project like in line as quickly as possible. And like, I don't want like, the experience of being on set is so intoxicating that like I can't wait. I'm like jonesing to get back there.
Mhm.
But the everything else and the emotional and physical and mental toll of it is also like very heavy. So the more
Yeah.
I whip myself to like get back to that place, the more pain, the more existential pain I put myself in.
That's
So I
exactly.
really felt your your description, and I really respect your decision to take a little bit of time to
Yeah.
nurture the other parts of your
I have
creativity. So I
to
love
though,
that.
because I think that's the thing about the health stuff is that I would push through in LA. Like I would have like 3 jobs and I was doing this and that. And it's like, you gotta chill. Like you're just not meant to do it that way, I guess, and that's okay. Everybody's different. But I'm remembering what you posted this morning about the different bullet points of like integrity. And I really resonated with number 7, where it was like everybody's just like next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, and I don't know if I believe in that. I don't know if I believe in that. And I know that people would say, well, that's not a smart business thing. And I'm like, well, I didn't get into it for the business though, but so I just but and I know you have to be smart about that stuff because clearly we just had a conversation about being smart about that. But it's also like, if that's my MO, then like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? And I said that to my producer because, he was saying, and he didn't mean it this way. I just took it that way, where it was like, well, what's the next thing? And you gotta, now that we're 6 months, through the film, like, let's just go on to the next. And I got into an argument with him where I was like, no. I was like, I will do this for 10 years if it means that it's Gabriela's going to have integrity. You know what I mean? Which I know is a little bit silly to say, but I really believe that. Like, I don't like this idea of like, the way that you were describing in that point where it's like, we make this thing and push it out. Now, next thing and push it out. It's like, I'm not a machine. And I hate that question sometimes of like, what's next? Not from like you or anything. I just mean when people say it so, and it's like, this thing's costs things. It's not just like, what's next? It's like birthing a child. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, when's the next one? Yeah,
yeah.
no, I actually, I really love that response, and I mean, I really resonate with it. I do think that that sort of like what's next culture, and the sort of like, especially in like casual conversation or sort of like film world conversation of like what's next or what are you working on. It's not like really about the whatever project you might be working on, or like what it's the social currency of like
Yeah.
everyone's all like of like the elitism of busyness, and that like the more busy and more
Like
frustrated
more
you
value you
are,
have or
the
something.
more value you have, and how you have to we all have to perform this like social cachet,
Yeah.
um that
Like
is.
that's why I try to be honest now where I'm like, no, I am doing nothing. Like F you. Like I'm gonna, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that like to disrespect the amount of work that, I mean, clearly we just talked about all that, like how much work it is, but it's like also I have a right to like do whatever I want. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't like, there's like privilege in that. I get it, but it's like, I just don't I don't understand what the whole point of like all this stuff of like personal liberation and all these things if we don't have a choice in what we're doing. Like the beautiful thing about choice is that you get to choose. That is the biggest, and this is circle back to the film, is that she's choosing her life now, in Gabriela. She's choosing her path. She's looking in the mirror and saying, "Oh, I do have a little bit of value and I can do what I want," you know? And that's kind of what I want for everyone is just to have this sense of like you are liberated enough and hopefully you find a way to be liberated enough where you can say, I'm making a choice for myself. That is so powerful to be able to say and validate yourself that way, especially in you're in a society that is like constantly trying to make you into what they want so that you will be a customer. You know what I mean? No, I'm not your game. I'm not playing your game. You know what I mean? That's hard to say, but it's also simple and it's the truth, I feel like. So, whatever.
Oh, that's beautiful. I aspire to that liberation one day. Not there now,
Yeah,
but
I don't think I'm like the most liberal. It's not like I'm like the Dalai Lama or something. I just mean like that's a very important tenet that I keep in my mind where I'm like, no, because trust me, every day feels hard to do that. It's not just like I've solved the world's like, you know what I mean? It's not that because every
yeah.
day, like I was crying like 2 days ago where I was like, did I make a good film? Like, you know what I mean? So it's not like it's just abolished all my feelings of human insecurity. It's just more like I have to keep reminding myself, like, you have a choice in this. You don't have to play this game, you know?
Evelyn, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed so much hearing your journey. It's been an
Thank you.
honor to watch this journey, to see it unfold, and I can't wait for you to rest. I can't wait for you to not do anything. Although, when you do choose to do the next thing, whatever that may be, on your own schedule, on your own timetable, I'm excited for that too. Um,
You.
Everyone, please, you can
Hey,
go
can I
check
just
out Gab.
honor you for a second? Can we just do that? Can we just honor Aaron, everybody in the web world? Like, he made a film. He's doing these podcasts. He's bringing the love of cinema to the masses. Like, this is so crucial and so vital. I just want to take a moment to do that. And thank you for having me. I appreciate what you're having.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm
I
serious.
need all the applause. I really do. I'm
I
not
need
here to
it. I've
I'm not above it.
people don't know this, but I said this to you several times. You changed my life. And like you said the most like you thought it was probably the most significant thing, but it literally even to this point of Gabriela, what you said has been like this thread of like the identity journey that I've been on. And so, I mean, seriously, like you just never know what like little things people say to other people and how they change their lives. You know what I
What
mean?
did I say? What did I say?
So I went to like I don't know if we were doing a scene together or something, but you were like I'm playing I think you were playing REM and you're like I'm playing some REM, come and chat about what you're going through. And I was like, okay, I'm going. And I was just saying that like I felt like I wasn't myself and that it was so hard to like feel like myself in these like, very exposing kind of ways that they set up art school. And I think and what you said was don't worry because you're never not yourself. And I was just like, whoa, like that was the most mind-bending thing I had like heard to that point. And I don't know why, but it was just like, oh my gosh, you don't have to worry. You're always yourself. It's just so powerful. And ever since then, I feel like it's been this journey of just being that and not worrying about it. Like it's just like even like I said, like even this story of Gabriela, like that thread is there. So it's just wild. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to like, you know, throw you so many whatever, but it's just the truth. Like it was just so powerful at that time.
It's amazing. I think my 35-year-old self could really use a conversation with my 19-year-old self. Yeah.
You
I
were,
was so assured.
you were like, I was just like, whoa, I want to be like Aaron. Like this is crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Well, that means a
yeah.
lot to me. Thank
No,
you.
no, it
Thank
does.
you.
And yeah, I even told Spencer, the sound guy, that because he worked on our film,
Yeah.
sound guy, and I was like, "Did you know?" And he was like, "That sounds like Aaron." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." He's like says these astute things and doesn't even realize it. Like, that's why I'm saying we have to value and honor you. Like, hello. Anyway,
Well, if you want to hear my hottest bangers, my greatest takes, and my next brilliant thoughts, come out to the Plaza Theater on January 23rd, where I will be screening Cleo from 5 to 7. It's going to be a fantastic evening of French feminist cinema. We get to celebrate Agnes Varda. It's going to be fabulous. I hope to see you there. Evelyn, thank you so much again for coming on Crash Zoom. We will be back next week. With Sammie will be returning to discuss all the latest news topics. Thank you so much for listening.